in her texts, which were discovered on his phone by his parents after he killed himself from asphyxiation. I think he was in a car and he died of carbon monoxide. He parked in a out of the way parking lot and so forth area and so forth. And the text revealed that she, Michelle Carter, had been giving him specific advice as to how to carry this out. She was, it would be fair to say, encouraging him to take his life, as opposed to what I imagine would be, I don't know, your response if you had somebody, you knew somebody who was going through those kinds of challenges and so forth. You would step forward and try to get some help, try and get some intervention and so forth. Wouldn't necessarily take it all entirely upon yourself, but at least, you know, identify and get some help. She didn't do that, okay? Her texts, the prosecutor argued, her words, the prosecutor argued, were the basis of a manslaughter charge, that her words ultimately killed him. Now, was she there when he was in the car? No. Her defense, of course, was they were just words. Now, they're about as nasty, negative, the kind of words as you can imagine. Okay? I don't know how much of a legal defense she ultimately put up. I think she, when it was all said and done, she was just like, bring it. So she's actually in jail right now, I want to say. She's been sentenced for a couple of years of jail on a conviction of manslaughter. Sorry, I already gave you the thing. Although, how many of you would, do you need any more facts? How many of you would say her First Amendment rights protected her from that nasty speech, but it didn't go far enough to actually push him into death? How many of you guys would say that the conviction is justified based on the words that she wrote in the texts? That's what the court said. And this is one that's actually made like advocates of free speech a little bit concerned. Because a lot of times before, you know, if you have to sort of, it's kind of like you got to do speech plus something else. You know, plus a little bit of an action and so forth, right? You know, as in like, if you just sort of like say, I want that person to die, is that enough? Well, if you hand them a gun and say, I want that person to die, that's, you know, that's words plus action. They're the ones that actually carry out the thing. But it's an important analysis, nevertheless. Yes. Okay? So this is a very, very controversial case, and she was not a sympathetic user of the English language. Okay? And ultimately, her words alone were deemed enough to put her in behind bars. I think she put on a defense and so forth, but again, I think when it ultimately came down to it, I mean, she was like, oh, yeah, that was really bad. I deserve what I'm going to get. I mean, in her mind, what she did was really guilty. And that happens sometimes, like in criminal law. You have a defendant charged with something, and they're just like, whatever, bring it. Like I think I might have told you about the case where the guy, he was sentenced to death in the state of Idaho, and he was executed, as opposed to like appealing it and appealing it and appealing. He's just like, go ahead and kill me. If you don't put up a defense in the trial or you don't put up an appeal, it sits there. But some free speech advocates are a little bit concerned about how that ultimately plays out. Okay? Any questions or comments? It's not a Supreme Court case, but it's an example of kind of what's out there. And, you know, how much... What's in your text? What's on your phone? What kind of words have you said or done or whatever? You know, hopefully, I mean, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, people, be nice. Hello. It was almost like she just sort of got so frustrated. She was like, whatever. You know? Whatever, get some help. Yeah. It's an interesting question. Presumably, they could have considered that. You know, they were looking at something really bad that happened and said, who's responsible? Well, who's responsible for the guy killing himself? Well, he is, but is she as well? That's what the prosecutor said, and that's what the judge went through. What's that? There were a fair number of things in there. It was kind of like if she didn't say it at once, she was like, kill yourself, I'm tired of hearing this, here's how you're going to do it, this is where you should go. I mean, it was like, here, let me look this up for you, you know. Yeah. It would be interesting, what if somebody, instead of like doing that, what if they wrote a book? No, that's OJ. Well, I mean, what if they wrote a book on how to kill yourself and published it and so forth? Could they be held accountable? Try this one. How to make a really big bomb that is illegal. I mean, those are the kinds of things. It's like, Google search, how to make a really big bomb. The government has now followed your Google search, and there's people outside your door ready to inquire further. Here's some speech. Write this down. As far as like national security speech, if you want to like make a joke about killing the President of the United States of America, oh my gosh, very, very low protected. You are going to be at least subject to Secret Service investigation. If you make a joke about having some kind of a explosive device at an airport, oh my gosh, no. You are at the very least going to be subject to a very intrusive physical search of all of your body cavities in order to determine whether or not you present a threat. You don't want to even go there. It's like at airports, you just never. You want a bad story? Yeah. Okay. There was a person who I knew who was coming back from, and this is the United States, because, I don't know, are we sensitive to, like, terrorism? Yes. Through airports? Yes. Yeah, September 11th, by the way, I just read today, looks like we're going to have all of our troops out of Afghanistan by September 11th of this year. Anyway, it only took 20 years. Anyway, so this person was traveling from Britain back to Canada, his home country, through the United States. Had a flight change in Seattle because it was cheaper. First mistake. Because, of course, if you go through Seattle, then you're going to go through the U.S. authorities and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, he brought back from Britain with him on his person a gift for a small child, for a family friend in Canada. It was a stuffed animal. Okay? And the American security person at the airport in Seattle was suspicious. Had some questions to ask, and basically thought that there might even be some kind of explosive or perhaps drugs inside of, which otherwise would appear to be innocuous, stuffed teddy bear or whatever it was. I forget what kind of animal it was. So, needless to say, the officer was prepared to, like, remove, I don't know, maybe the head or something in order to conduct a more invasive search of the inanimate object. He was not too happy about that, which raised the level of suspicion by the officer of this young man. Which you do not want to do anything to raise the suspicion of somebody as you're going through a high-level security area. So they sent him to a room where he had a full body cavity search conducted by personnel from the United States government. Get a good education so you don't. Needless to say, he's like, if I never have to go fly through the United States of America ever again for a flight, that would be perfect. So, speech. You have to, like, really be watchful because they're super, super, super sensitive national security stuff. Jokes, bomb jokes, drug jokes, things like that are not going to be okay. Here, and then there, and then there. Yes? Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Is it political? No. I mean, it's not. But it's kind of like, what are your resources? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, shh. Mm-hmm. Good thing. He's doing his job. Here's a piece of advice for you. If you're ever in an airport and so forth, you got two lines to go in, and you're like, one of them is manned by somebody who's fairly young, maybe your age, maybe a little bit older, and the other one is staffed by somebody who's quite a bit older. Which line do you go into? The older guy. The older guy can assess you, hopefully, if you are completely innocent. They can look you over because they've had lots and lots of experience, and they're like, hey, you know, whatever, you're cool. The younger guy doesn't want to make any mistakes whatsoever, so all he's got to do is go, I don't know, take him to the back room for further investigation. Got that? That's just my experience. Doesn't hold 100% of the time, but in any event, you just cooperate, keep it quiet, and just make your way through. Question in here.
Chris, I think there was less of people were saying I'm going to kill something, or rather, I want him dead.
That's a status thing as opposed to like a illegal activity being carried out.
At the Seattle airport, they literally count every single person.
They do.
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like, what they
Yep.
count everybody.
Even if you're like a little kid.
Yeah.
Yep. So, the famous Tinker case. Write this down. We're going to use this as a starting point. The Tinker case from 1969, student speech. Okay? And then we'll get into the Morse versus Frederick case, which is like one of my favorite ones. Student speech. The baseline is this. You ready? The Tinker case. Vietnam War is going on. Okay? Very controversial war. Some people are okay, stop communism in Vietnam, because otherwise, communism is just a bad thing, period. The difficulty, of course, we have a lot of particularly young men, draft age, going over to the fight, and we're paying a very high cost. Needless to say, the anti-Vietnam War movement is percolating all over the place, campuses, and in this particular high school in Iowa. Okay? Students show up wearing a black armband. Notice this. You've got to get the facts of this, because the facts are very important as to how it's going to be evaluated. They wear a black armband. The message is sympathy and recognition of those that have lost their lives for among Americans fighting in Vietnam. And perhaps, I'm not entirely sure of this, maybe sympathy for people who've lost their lives over there, period, right? Among the Vietnamese population. In any event, that's the political message quietly worn on the students at high school, okay? So it's not interrupting class going, when do we want stop war? When do we want it? We want it anyway. So like all this cheering and ranting is like, I'm just trying to get through your multiplication. Seriously, would you be quiet while I'm trying to do this? So it was a quiet protest. They were punished for being disruptive of the student of the student learning environment. You understand that? They were punished. They were, it wasn't the green hair. It was the armband. Got that? Well, these guys weren't even of draft age. I mean, they're high school students. What about the teachers? Yeah, you could. I mean, if you were going to be in college, you could get a deferral. That's why some people spend a lot of time in college, right? So the kids were punished for expressing their point of view in the high school setting. It was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, and how many of you guys felt the students were justifiably punished? How many of you guys felt the students were unjustifiably punished for quietly expressing their political point of view? All right, so you guys, I mean, this has been pretty much the case. The Tinker case, though, write it down. I mean, it's got basically the opinion right there. The absence of specifics showing constitutionally valid reasons to regulate their speech, students are entitled to freedom of expression of their views. Boom. Got that? So student-free speech is a thing. You don't lose all of your rights when you enter into the public school building. And I think the facts of that case are important. Was this loud, obnoxious speech? I was fairly quiet. Okay? It was a black armband. Okay? there was a case that came out, you don't have to know it right down there and so forth, but it had to do with students' points of view in a student newspaper on campus. And the Supreme Court said that the school could limit student speech in the school-run newspaper because it was part of a journalism class. So that was a limitation. But there was another situation that's kind of lurking out there, and you know what I'm talking about. And that is, what if your speech has to do with school, but it's off campus? Oh, actually, we need that one now. I'm going to jump to this one right now because this one's a fairly quick one because I don't know how this is going to turn out. This is a case, I just read about it. The United States Supreme Court took this case. It took this case, all right? And it actually came out of Pennsylvania, I want to say a high school, maybe it was even a middle school. A girl who was not really happy with her cheerleading squad on Snapchat used some pretty foul language about F the school and F the cheerleading coach and F. You get what I'm saying? It was off campus. She did quickly delete it and so forth, but apparently the school found out about it. Exactly. Now here's the deal. The lower courts ruled in her favor. And when it got appealed, the next appellate court ruled in her favor. I can't remember exactly where they're at, but I want to say they're right up to like the, I think it's the federal circuit, whatever number that is for where they're living. She's won every time because they basically said the school doesn't have authority and jurisdiction over speech that has taken place outside. Nevertheless, the Mahoney School District is appealing it up to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court took it. There's speculation that the Supreme Court is going to make a clear rule as to when schools can punish and when schools cannot. Okay? So I'm predicting she's going to win again with the Supreme Court. Write down the very first facts of this one. Are you ready? Morse versus Frederick. We will get the decision on this for you, and we'll actually give you guys an opportunity. Here are the facts. It was a relay race, or a relay for the Olympic torch, because I think the Winter Olympics was going to be held in that year. I think it was Salt Lake. Anyway, so they run it through Anchorage, Alaska, and so they let the school out during the school day, and the students are like, okay, get along the street and so forth as the torch is going by. Woohoo! And some students held up a big sign that literally, here's the sign, bong hits for Jesus. They were punished. They appealed, saying that the punishment shouldn't be allowed under First Amendment grounds. This is a complicated case because you've got religious expression, highly protected, and then you've got advocacy for illegal activities. We'll unpack this case next time. Wipe down, everybody, and then you guys are free to go. Okay, so next time we are going to do the bong hits for Jesus case. We are going to do the case.